nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First great podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid podcast. It is Saturday. It's not Saturday. It's Monday. It's Sunday. You know what? It's the international break's fault. I blame international break. I don't know what day it is. It's Monday, September 9th. And I'm your host, Dion Sabani, joined today by my co-host, Leah Ravel from Argentina. How you doing, Leah?
I'm doing well. International break has me in the dumps, I agree, but otherwise well.
What did you think of Modric's goal last night?
To be fair, the day before his birthday, please. It was like fine wine, you know?
Incredible.
First of all, it makes me wonder why he hadn't been taking more set pieces. I mean, I guess he took corners when Cruz wasn't playing, but why isn't he taking more free kicks if he scores them like that?
It's worth a look for sure. It's worth a look.
It is.
So, in 8 days, Real Madrid's Champions League campaign kicks off. We got Stuttgart at home, and that'll be the beginning, Leah, of a new format, which I was about to say the new beginning of a new Super League format, but it's not called Super League because it's the Champions League. But it sure kind of does feel like the Super League, doesn't it?
It's interesting because there was so much uproar. Let me preface by saying my stance on this new format is I'm a firm believer of don't fix what's not broken kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I understand that it opens up the competition for more, for teams that wouldn't typically qualify. There's 36 teams now, so there's a few more. But for me, maybe this is also a lot of nostalgia bias. I'm so used to old Champions League format that the new format is why? You know? But then everyone was all in arms, all in uproar when Perez said he wants to introduce this Super League, blah, blah, blah. Other clubs dropped out because they didn't want to be involved. And it looks pretty similar, just with a different name. So I can see you mentioned something before we started this about a tweet that you saw this morning, and I'll let you talk about that. But I just feel like now it's fair game. You know what I mean? If UEFA's hosting this, then why can't Perez go ahead with the Super League?
Well, that's a loaded question. I hope we don't have a time crunch today. Do we have a time crunch?
All
right.
I always leave an extra hour for us because we go over anyway.
I mean, I had something. You and I had something specific in mind about today in terms of what we're going to tackle. We want to talk about the new Champions League format, what it means for Real Madrid, and beyond that, what it means for football. How does it affect us? How does it affect others? But I do think it's impossible not to talk about the Super League because of this very thing that this is, in a lot of ways, the Super League with some minor differences. The tweet I was talking about earlier today, which I mentioned to you off air, was a tweet from Ramon Alvarez de Mon, who is one of Florentino's insider guys. And he's one of the Marca guys. And he had tweeted out this morning that there's a big Super League announcement coming. And there's no other timeline other than that. It's kind of vague. And I don't know what that means. I believe he's the only person who's reported it. I could be wrong on that. And look, I don't when you think of Super League announcement, what does that mean? But you can make all the Super League announcements you want. How is this thing going to happen? You still only have 2 or 3 teams. There was that thing that the Napoli president slipped a few months ago where he was like, oh, there's secretly actually many more clubs involved, but they're not allowed to say it publicly because they don't want to get in trouble or they don't want to face the PR backlash. Of course, now legally, UEFA can't punish teams for wanting to be part of the Super League, so they at least have that. But they may be afraid of the PR and the public backlash that they'll receive, because there's going to be a lot when that happens. But it's interesting
For
when
sure.
So I'm going through Stephen Mandis's draft for his book, because he sent it to me, and it's about Real Madrid and kind of their vision of the Super League. And he had gone through and basically gone back and stated, like, every single time that Real Madrid wanted to change the Champions League format, they weren't able to take control of it, but every single time they tried, the Champions League format changed. So it goes back to like when in the late 80s, when Real Madrid and Milan wanted to change it, the Champions League format changed. And then it changed again, because when I grew up, Leah, there was two group stages. There was an initial group stage, and then you would, instead of a round of 16, you'd go into the second group stage, and then you'd play another group stage. And then they changed it to now it's round of 16. And now it's, of course, changed again after yet another push for a Super League. So it does, maybe that was the inevitable outcome. Maybe in the end, that's what they wanted to do. But obviously, this Super League thing is not really going to benefit them that much, apart from a little bit more money. I think, I don't know about you, but the Super League format, to me, if you ask me, it wasn't about the format that they cared so much. It's more about the power that they wanted, right? I don't think Real Madrid cared that much about, let's make this a league. I think they wanted to be more in control and take it out of the UEFA monopoly. And then this is kind of what's happening. So what were your thoughts on the actual format itself? Do you like it? Do you hate it?
I don't. At first, I was like, "Oh, what even is it? What does this even mean?" I'm not again, I'm like a creature of habit. I have the nostalgia behind it. We've won so many Champions Leagues in the old format that as it stands, I mean, I haven't seen anything in this year's Champions League format yet, so I don't know. But I just think from a competitive perspective, it's probably a little harder because now there's more teams that we have to beat. You don't get an even, as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even know if I understand it fully yet. As far as I understood, you don't necessarily get a home and away for each team that you face. So
Yeah, you
there's
don't know.
advantages and disadvantages there. Yeah, which is odd because in some cases it's entertaining and it's exciting because it's one chance, it's do or die. But then also it takes away some advantage or disadvantage if, for example, fans want to see a certain matchup and there's not enough away fan tickets available, yada yada yada. But the big thing for me, I think, is we already have, as all of us Madridistas know, we already have such an injury crisis right now, and it's due to overload. There's just so much happening. There's so many games. There's so much going on. Why are we? I understand that Nations League and CONCACAF and South America, they're on a ball. That there's World Cup qualifiers already, which in hindsight it's only 2 years away, so it makes sense. But there's always so many unnecessary friendlies during the year that just contribute to the overload of these players. And I always thought about it from an injury perspective, obviously, because this year it's been 4 match weeks and we're already in a position of 2020 2021 all over again. But for players as human beings too, they have no time with their family. They're always traveling, they're always on the road, they're always training, they're always playing some kind of match. So that must take a big mental toll on these players and their families too. So adding more games in a format that might have not even been necessary in the first place, I don't know. I just think it's exciting. It's more competitive for sure. Like I said before, it opens up the doors for more teams to be able to qualify. So if, there has been teams that just barely didn't qualify for Champions League every year, maybe now they will, but I don't know. It's just concerning with the overload that these players, the amount of games, the sheer amount of games that these players are playing. And like I said, we're 4 matches into the season, or 4 match weeks into the season, and we already, like, pretty much don't have center backs. So, who knows, God forbid, like, what will happen further on. But I am excited to see matchups that we hadn't seen before, Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not not old enough, but I don't know if we've ever played Stuttgart away. Is it away or is it home? It's home, I think, right?
Stuttgart is at home.
Stuttgart home.
I feel like we have,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't. So I don't think we're going to get a huge diversity of new matchups. Um,
Mm,
I mean, it's an increase of 4 teams, right? It was 32.
yeah.
Now it's 36.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just, I don't know how else to put it, but it's just a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot on the schedule, and I don't even necessarily
Yeah.
mean on an individual team's schedule. It's just a lot, and I don't know if you ever feel overwhelmed. Um, and I don't know how relatable this is, but for me personally, growing up, I knew when everyone was playing. I knew
Mhm.
I knew the Real Madrid schedule basically memorized. I knew what games I wanted to watch. I knew like a week in advance, you had this big game in the Champions League. I still do know that, but I can't track everything as well as I used to.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's become so much that it's just not as exciting anymore
Yeah.
for me. Growing up, it was just like it was an event. Like, yes, we're gonna show up. You can have people over, or you can just kind of like plan ahead. And now
Mhm.
there's just so much on all the time. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, there's so many other sports that are happening. There are, as you know, there's esports, which is not to bring up to be like people are watching esports, but it's to bring up like people are like have a lot of things they can do right now, right? And I
Mhm.
just feel like I get overwhelmed now. There's just so many games. There are so many things to keep track of. What do you watch? Today I was like thinking like, do I want to watch Mbappe or do I want to watch Arda Güler? And I think
Yeah.
by default it's going to be Güler because I read a report that maybe Mbappe is going to be rested for this one. But it's just a
Mm.
lot, and I don't know if, like how much to. And now it's just like you kind of pick and choose. Like, okay, I'll just emphasize Real Madrid. Those are the ones I'm for sure going to watch, and the rest, I'll try my best. I'll kind of try to plan around it. But there's just so much happening. My ultimate point is this, Leah. I don't know if it's just if it's causing a dip in quality because of the sheer volume of games that are happening,
For sure.
right? Like we
Like,
kind of
for
saw that
sure,
with
for
the
sure.
Euros. Do you remember how much like people
Yeah.
were complaining about the Euros are boring, man, after the group stages? Like,
Yeah.
well, these players like
Yeah.
Jude
Well,
Bellingham just played 3 million minutes and then a Champions League final, and now he's here running out of gas at halftime.
yeah. That's the thing. You make a good point because it's just with the format, but with also the sheer amount of games, it's just like the redundancy of it. Like the Euros, I don't know. I don't know if it's because the World Cup was later than it should have been. So the Euros were much closer to the World Cup. And so we waited less time between both tournaments. But even that, like, I just feel like you wait 4 years for like the biggest sporting event of the year. And then in another, oh no, it's 4, it's 2. So it was the appropriate amount of time, right? Or was it not?
What are you asking specifically?
The amount of time between the World Cup and the Euros, it was the appropriate amount of time,
To,
or a bit
so
less.
2022 World Cup. Uh, no, I think it ended
Yeah,
up working out 2 years, right?
the same, maybe like 6 months less
Yeah,
because the
I
World Cup
think
was
there
in
was a
December.
little discrepancy, but it wasn't quite like, yeah.
But that's when I feel like that was the turning point of like schedule overload,
Right.
was when the World Cup was put, when all of the domestic leagues were paused, and then they came back,
I
and then
think
they were
it was the Euros that were postponed, not the World Cup,
they
because of
were, weren't
COVID.
they?
Yeah, because of COVID.
The Euros, last Euros, not this Euros.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, when that turning point was, when it was like, because I feel now we've had 3 international men's tournaments. We've had 2 international women's tournaments all in the span of, like, 5 years, it feels like,
Yeah.
you know? So, like, that typically, even, like, just speaking for the men's tournaments alone, 2 Euros and a World Cup in a 4-year span, because the Euros were just after, like, during COVID, but just after, I think 2021, and then the following year was the World Cup, but in December,
Yeah.
and then the Euros again were this summer,
Yeah.
but still like a year and a half after instead of the full 2 years. It doesn't seem like a lot, but, like, then the domestic leagues were paused during COVID, so they had to, like, jam all of these games. The league was ending later, but also starting earlier to, like, get back on track with schedules. I don't know what exactly went on, but I think that was the beginning of, like, this redundancy of, like, game. I love it, like, I love watching football, I love that there's always something to watch, but it's like you said, now I have to choose between 10 games are on. Yesterday, there was, like, 6 Nations League games on at the same time at 3:45 here,
Yeah.
you know? So then it's like, okay, well, I can't watch 6 or 5. I have to
Right.
choose 1, and not that Nations League is, like, as big of a tournament as the Euros, but the same thing kind of happened in the Euros, like, and even and now in Champions League, like, there's gonna be a million games on at the same time because they just logistically don't have enough time to be able to fit all of these games in over, like, a week, 2-week span.
Well,
So
this problem also was with the Champions League in the last few years too. For whatever reason, they hold big matches simultaneously at the same time. They typically have that 8:45, or now it's like that 9 o'clock start in
yeah.
in Europe, and it's like, how hard can it be just to stagger these, like just do back to back, so that, and I feel like that would even make sense financially for them too, if like not
Mhm.
everyone, like instead of splitting the viewership, at least just double up the viewership. I don't get that part, but I do think I have a bit of an unpopular take on the Super League. Um, but this idea of, like, we only want to see Real Madrid versus Liverpool, it's special because it's like, once every X amount of years, or Real
Yeah.
Madrid versus City, like, which is a newer rivalry because City have zero history. But like, really,
Facts.
you only want to see these teams play each other every 5-10 years? Really? Do you really feel that
Yeah.
way? Because, like, look, in the Premier League, I think it was 1992. I think it was around that time when the new Premier League was essentially formed because there was 7 English teams who wanted to break away, and because they're the ones who were
Yeah.
bringing in the most revenue, etc. And then they kind of restructured it a little bit. And now you have this version of it. But I'm sorry, like, I understand why Real Madrid versus which team? I don't know. Real Madrid versus, I'm trying to think of which team not to offend, but let's say Club Brugge, okay? Real Madrid
Mhm.
versus Club Brugge. Wow, it's so special. Like, it happens it doesn't happen very often. I'd rather face, let's say if I'm a neutral, okay? I'd rather
Mhm.
face, you know, Liverpool. I'd rather have a Real Madrid schedule of Real Madrid versus Chelsea, Real Madrid versus Liverpool, Real Madrid versus City, Real Madrid versus Barcelona, Real Madrid versus Bayern Munich. From a pure ratings perspective, no matter how much people complain about that specific thing, that is going to be the most popular thing to watch. So I get that. Like,
Mhm.
people are going to tune into that more than they're going to tune into Real Madrid versus Club Brugge.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why I think, like, like the NFL is unbelievably successful, right? Because
Yeah.
there's not that many teams, and it's focused and condensed, and it's not overload. I think that's probably a model that more people should copy, actually.
Mhm.
But no matter how much we complain about, like, oh, we don't want to play these teams like all the time, like, those are going to be the most watched games.
Mhm.
It's not going to be
Yeah.
it's not going to be the Real Madrid versus X small team, is my point. And, like, from a viewership standpoint, I think that would be really fun. I think people are going to complain about it, but once that phase passes, if anything like this ever does come into fruition, then people are going to quickly forget about it. that we complained about this, because no matter how much we complain from a ratings perspective, a format like that would do really well.
Well, that's the thing too, is that like from a viewership perspective, from a financial perspective, even from like a financial perspective from the clubs themselves, I don't see, besides the fixture schedule, like I don't think it's realistic unless the fixture schedule changes somehow. And every 2 years there's an international tournament. So, but adding something that could act at, well, I guess that wouldn't make any sense, but I don't know. I just think there's like a lot of unnecessary friendlies that don't need to happen. There's a lot of like, I don't know, like this, for example, we're 2 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season, there's already an international break. It's insane. But the popularity of something like the Super League, there's virtually, in my opinion, no chance that it wouldn't become, maybe not necessarily what the Champions League is, but it'll have the popularity of a tournament, like it'll have the novelty of the tournament like that, and not something like the Club World Cup where the opponents, generally speaking, are, you know, relatively easy. The Super Cup, generally speaking, it's relatively simple. Like from a fandom perspective, it would be very exciting. But from a financial perspective, if these clubs want an extra opportunity to win money for their club, like millions of dollars, Barcelona, a perfect example, like who knows if they'd ever qualify or if they've ever be involved, but like clubs that are in financial difficulty or like want to make a big signing, another opportunity to make prize money in that essence, for me, from solely a financial standpoint, makes perfect sense. It's just, again, the fixture schedule, the players, the injuries, like something would have to change for that to make sense. But I agree with you. I think part of me feels like there's always an opportunity for a new rivalry. Like City, for example, has never really been a rivalry because, as you said, they have no history. But like Liverpool has evolved over the years. It was a rivalry, but now there's like this weird respect between Real Madrid fans and Liverpool fans, because I think like they just know that we're superior at this point. Like I feel like even watching the games, I don't get as like, oh damn, like this is going to be intense. It's just like, okay, it's kind of, do you know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't hate, like I'm looking at our group right now for the Champions League. Dortmund, Liverpool, Milan, or our group, the teams that we're playing. Dortmund, Liverpool, Milan, our league. Atalanta, Salzburg, Lille, Stuttgart, and Brest. And like Brest, no offense, but is probably like the most, I don't want to say irrelevant, but like a relevant team in that group. And the other ones probably will be like relatively decent games. Atalanta is always challenging. Stuttgart, luckily we're not playing away, but they have insane fans, so a home game at Stuttgart would be difficult. So like with clubs like that, I'm here for the opportunity for a new rival, like a new rivalry to be created, because I do think there's some level of redundancy also. Like if we're playing Liverpool, City, Chelsea every single year and it's the same like matchup, it's kind of what we've seen in the Champions League, to be fair. I don't know. I'm indifferent. I think over the years it could get redundant if it's the same like 8 teams, 10 teams, whatever. But also it's the consistency of excitement is you're always in for a good fixture no matter what it is. I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit, but
no. So I think it's also interesting to kind of go over like what actually changed in terms of the match output, because it's one of those things where like we're playing 2 extra games in the group stage, right? So every team gets eight games instead of the nominal, I think it was 6, right? So you play each team twice, so 6.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like that much extra on the surface, but it's like I feel like every year we just incrementally, like sneakily add 2 games.
Mhm.
It started with in England the Carabao Cup, in Spain the
Mhm.
Spanish Super Cup, and then this is like the new version of the Champions League. So like incrementally, we're like getting like 2, 4, 6 games added per season. The new Club
Yeah.
World Cup is going to be just this new insane thing. So it's just like it feels like it's slowly adding up and getting to a point like now you see like if you get as far as you can possibly go, you're gonna get 72 games. And who knows what that number will be? Will this number jump like in 10 years from now? Will we have 10 group stage games instead of 8? Like, will it just keep incrementally going up? Because it kind of sneaks up on you how many games all of a sudden you're playing.
Mhm.
But I do think, look, from a financial perspective, I don't know how much necessarily those 2 additional games for Real Madrid, especially if they're like away to Lille or whatever, how much it makes a difference for them. But I do think like for Brest, this is an amazing opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Getting those 8 games on a European stage is huge for them, and that's
Mhm.
not something they would. Now you could argue also like a lot of these teams who will sneak in, they're going to suffer domestically. Maybe that's a trade off they'll take. I do remember it was interesting that a few years ago when A-Bar were like making noise in La Liga, and
Yes.
the people on their board said like we kind of like wouldn't care if we didn't make it to Europa League because we know how it
Mm.
would be impossible for us to sustain something like that with the limited depth and resources we have. Like sure we
Yeah.
get some prize money or whatever to qualify, but we'd probably get decimated that season if we did. So I don't know how they would. It depends on the team. How would they, you know? It would be interesting also the perspective of like the big fish in the smaller ponds, like a Celtic in Scotland. Like how would they feel about it? Um,
Mm.
but actually, like I was actually curious to know with this new format, would we actually get more big games? And I think we would, but it would be marginal. Like, would you say that in every Champions League in the group stage, let's say there's 2 blockbuster teams, those are the big
Mhm.
matchups, right? So that's 2 of those matchups per group. There was 8 groups, so you'd get about 16 big games in the group stages.
Mhm.
I went through this whole thing to see how many big games we actually get. I think it's about the same. It's probably
But
slightly more, depending on like, do you consider Leipzig or Juve or Milan at this stage big teams that people would tune into? It's debatable.
I would say so.
Yeah,
Milan for sure, because that's like 2 European giants,
yeah.
respectively. I guess 7,
So
15 is a big difference.
if
But
I got it right, I'm not going to list them off because that would be boring. But it's probably about 16 to 20 big games we get in the group stages. I don't know if it's that
yeah,
much more. So in the end,
but
it's I think whatever reason they give us, it's just more money. Is the truth?
for sure, that's literally 1,000,000,000%. That's the only reason that it's even changed at all is for money. I do think, however, because, and I don't even know if I fully understand the format yet, in its entirety, but because it's now a league format and the top 8 then qualify through, and then the rest are in playoffs. Those top 8, like, because it's no longer like a two-sided bracket, unless I'm wrong, depending on, I guess it would then turn into a bracket once the top 8 are chosen in the league. Because then I'm just wondering, like, those top 8, because now in the round of 16, you can have generally like the top teams that compete in the Champions League, but then there's like 4 or 5 like clubs that just get really lucky that have a group stage that like crawl through based on like, one match point that they had or a poor match that, you know what I mean? Like the what was that one year? Did Young Boys qualify out of the groups or Sheriff?
Uh,
Whatever one it was.
I think it was Young Boys. Sheriff is the team that beat us.
Yeah, with
Remember
the
the 1-0. Young
screamer.
Boys, I
Yeah.
think qualified and I don't know if it was against Manchester United or someone else they played. But yeah,
Yeah. But like those like, like more less experienced teams in the Champions League. So I think with this format, like following this like league format group stage situation, I think then it's like yes or yes, big fixtures.
Yeah.
But then I don't know, right?
Well, I was thinking about this because I wonder how it'll specifically impact Real Madrid, like on a mental level, because we're so much better when the season is on the line and it's like a big Champions League game than we are in, like, just week to week league, staying focused, getting up for the game. And I wonder if, like, if you just turn this too much into a league, how would they react to that? Because there's the margin of error for this league Champions League format is insane. You could come 24th and still qualify because 1 to 8 is guaranteed, and then 9 to 24 goes into a playoff round.
Yeah.
You could literally just play like shit and just not qualify. And I mean qualify like by being a very very low seed, and that actually makes it kind of interesting in some sense, because if you have a big team who sleepwalks through it and then just makes it as a lower seed to the next round, the team that like really got to the top and won all their games are gonna be like they might feel like kind of ripped off, like, oh shit, we won all our games, we dominated, now we have to face like Real Madrid who came 8th. That sucks. I
Yeah.
actually kind of wonder how that dynamic will work out, like, because there's so much margin of error. How much incentive do the big teams have, or will they have? Like, let's say, I think this might affect the Premier League more than other leagues, but if Arsenal have to play against Manchester City in the league, and then 3 days later have to play a group stage game against whoever, which one will they prioritize? I feel like they would prioritize the City game.
Yeah. Like in the league, you mean?
In the league, yeah, in the league.
I agree. I think it depends. I don't know, because it's true. What is stopping? Like there is seeding,
Yeah.
obviously, and you probably get like a qualifying bonus for being the top 8. So like from a money standpoint, I'm sure there's like some incentive. But if, for example, you're like an Arsenal that's fighting for the league, that has been fighting for the league for the last several years, and been head to head with City every year, what's stopping them from not prioritizing this group stage, walking through it knowing that, okay, like there's a chance that we don't, or like, we have these big games, but let's start our B team for like the however many smaller home or away games they have in the group stage, and then just kind of focusing on whatever playoff games they have to be that last 8 that qualify. It's a good point, because I don't know, that's the thing. And then also without the aggregate scores, without the home and away, that's going to be an interesting dynamic too, because it's like a big talking point for us was like, oh, well, we have City at home, we have Chelsea at home, so we're not nervous, like we're not scared. We have the fans, we're at the Bernabeu, like we're at home, whatever. But like now you don't have that advantage. Like you play one team one time at home, or like 4 away, 4 home, all different teams. So there's no like home away advantage. So if, for example, are we away, home or away against Liverpool?
We're away at Liverpool.
Like we've been there.
That'll be the hardest game by far.
Yeah, that's a tough match. But then, like, if we're is Brest home or away?
I couldn't tell you that one.
Yeah, so if Brest is,
I know we have Milan and Stuttgart at home. By the way, back to your original question, this is the very first time in Champions League history that we are going to play Stuttgart in the Champions League.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their fans are, some German sides have like insane fans. So I think that like we're fortunate in a sense to not play home, like away there. But Brest, for example, coming to play away at the Bernabeu, like
Brest is away, by the way.
It is, okay.
Yeah, which is
And
great
it's
for their fans.
fabulous. It was like Bruges. No, not Bruges. Braga last year
Hmm.
when they like were so stoked to just even have like Real Madrid players in their stadium.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I think from a player like a player standpoint, that's a huge advantage or disadvantage. But also from a fan standpoint, like less traveling fans, less it's like support at home, support on the road, whatever. I don't know. It's odd. I'm really interested to see it like all kind of pan out because I genuinely I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
All I
Yeah.
can tell you for sure is injuries will happen, and I'm sure of that.
I gotta say, like, I'm open-minded about the whole thing.
Yeah.
I feel like with each time there's change in anything, there's gonna be resistance. And then sometimes you're like, wow, this was amazing. Two
Mhm.
recent things was, I think people were skeptical about the Nations League. It
Yeah.
basically replaced friendlies, which, it turned out to be more exciting, at least. In the NBA, they had that recent thing with now they have the play-ins and then the mid-season tournament, both where people were skeptical, but they became wild successes.
Mhm.
So I'm open to this, I guess. Like, maybe it's going to be a resounding success. We're like, wow, this is great. I don't know how much it actually changes. It's just really just a new format, which
Yeah.
I think we're both pretty clear was they felt like they had to do it because of the Super League and then plus like, other pressures and then also more money. And that was it.
Yeah. I think just people don't like new things, you know?
Sure.
So people just are comfy with how things were. To be fair, like once it's in knockouts, nothing changes that much.
Nothing changes in the knockouts. No.
Yeah.
Just round of
So
16 and on, it's what we're used to.
yeah. So it's really just kind of getting used to this weird like group stage format league situation. Anyone and their dog can literally qualify. Despite like which kind of like you said, kind of sucks. Like kind of being like well,
There's
why did
less at
I
stake for each match. There's
yeah.
less at stake. Yeah.
Exactly, because then it's like, well, why did I bust my ass for 8 matches and, like,
Yeah.
sacrifice these injuries and these players and, like, whatever other team lost most of their games and then went into a playoff and then won another qualified still, you know? So, I can see some, like what I can see is if, like we've seen every year, if we have a poor like group stage but then qualify in playoffs, which I don't think this will happen. I think we'll qualify comfortably in the top 8. But then we go on to win the Champions League. People will just be like, "Oh, well, maybe, like maybe."
They'll find
Like
their
they normally
excuse.
do. They
They'll
will.
find yeah. They'll start
But
saying things like this whole format was to benefit Real Madrid per
yeah.
usual. Yeah.
Literally, "Oh, this is how they play all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe."
At some
But
point if Real Madrid just keep winning every iteration, they have to come up with a different excuse. I don't know.
literally.
Well,
But yeah, I'm interested to see it in action.
yeah. I do think now more than ever in this history of football, squad depth is going to be important more than it's ever been.
Yes.
It's one thing to
Mhm.
have your best players, but you need to be minimum 2 deep in every position, or
Yeah.
at the very least have players who are versatile and can cover multiple positions, which Real Madrid
Mhm.
generally are good at doing. The defense is still, for obvious reasons, very worrisome, but uh,
But,
yeah,
like, did we not learn from this last year? Do you know what I mean? Like, we lost almost all of our defenders, our 2 starting center backs, and then over the course of the season, thank God Carvajal decided that, like, this was the year he was gonna fix his diet because I think he had, like, 1 knock last year, but he was good the whole year. Mendy, I think, was injured a couple times. But then, like yeah, he was because Camavinga had to play left back a few times. But, like, then I think Nacho had a knock for a couple weeks, and then we had Tchouaméni that had to play center back at one point, and then do you know what I'm saying? Like, did we
yeah.
not learn last year that we need reinforcements? And now, like, I saw that I think Vallejo is fit again, but,
I
like
think Vallejo's going to be ready. I mean, I think it's it's crazy that it happened this fast.
Yeah.
Like we all
Yeah.
knew at some point, because we have like 2 defenders left, this was going to be a problem, but like
Yeah.
that it would be a problem at the very first international break of the season. And
Yeah.
the guy who we would use in the in case of emergency scenario, Chouameni, is injured. And so like
Yeah.
it all happened so fast and so sudden and so prolific, like right away.
Literally all at once. But this is what we talked about the last time we were on together, is that, like,
Yeah.
you can only rely on players, versatile players, so much. Like, there's gonna be a point, like now,
Yeah.
where you're going to prefer to have reinforcements than have, it's just, I think, also really unlucky that both of our, like, Castilla center backs are also injured. So we're really screwed, you know? But I don't know. Hopefully this is a lesson to make winter signings for once.
I mean, that look, I understand it's poor planning, but it's just really really bad luck to like the fact that there are scenarios where you could go deep enough to call on the youth team players and those guys are injured too. I
Yeah.
guess that
Yeah.
leaves like 1 or 2 Castilla center backs that we could maybe call on, but the 2 best ones are injured.
Yeah.
So it's just shit luck, and then your DM is injured. Although, look, luckily in the Chouameni case, um, it's not long term.
Yeah.
It seems to be like so like, yeah.
Hope so. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. We do have a quick super chat we're gonna take. Ural Desai says, "Will we see the top 5 leagues have 18 teams soon?"
Probably. Did you know the Argentinian league has like 26 or 28 teams? It's insane. The competitiveness goes away completely. Like, there's no.
And do each of those teams play each other twice?
Yeah. Good question.
I
Not
guess
sure.
you could quickly check if
Let me
like
check.
how many games they play.
Yeah, let me check.
But 18 is a reduction in La Liga's case. So I don't.
True.
Oh, I don't know exactly what Ural means. Like, is this a collective 18? The top 5 leagues turn into a collective 18 teams, or like each of those will have 18 teams? I'm a little bit confused by the question, but
Cannot confirm or deny.
yeah.
I think 20 is like a nice sweet spot for
20 works.
like domestically. I think it's comfy. And depending on the thing though is you take away teams, you have like teams that would normally be safe in the table be relegated. And so you get a lot more versatility with teams in and out. The issue though with every league is literally the same top 3 teams generally. Like every year there's a team, like last year it was Girona, that was like, oh, maybe we can win, and then it's like, and it's kind of like the same story.
Well, this is going back to what the Napoli president said a few months ago of like, there are more teams that want to be part of the Super League, but they can't publicly state it. I think
Yeah.
if that's true, it's gonna be like a lot of the quote unquote old, traditionally old big clubs with the old money that would be interested.
Yeah.
Because when you think of like the Super League and those 12 teams, a lot of them were just like the teams who used to be really, really good, but now can no longer compete. Like I'm talking about Milan, right?
Yeah.
Milan, when we were kids, was a juggernaut. They had all the best players,
Yeah.
and now they just can't compete in this new landscape. And so for teams like that to be grandfathered into something like this, although we know it's not, you can't be fully grandfathered in, but they kind of are anyway, because it's going to be hard for them to be relegated with the system. It would really benefit teams like that. It would really benefit Barca. It would really benefit AC Milan. It would really benefit Juve. And obviously like teams like City, they're like, okay, do we really care? Like, I mean, it would benefit us, but we're not as desperate for this as you guys are. Like, so
Yeah.
I think teams like that might be privately hoping that something like this would happen. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm really interested to know what the next like big unveiling is for the Super League.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming before the Champions League starts, it'll come out to kind of shift. Especially, okay, I have a theory. I'm just fully speaking like in my head. Like this is like a shower thought, you know? My theory is there's a lot of like head to heads behind the scenes. Like there's probably a lot of people like at UEFA, a lot of people like on Florentino Perez's side that probably like are butting heads and are not happy with this. Like UEFA turned them down for so many years and then essentially took their idea and changed like the format of the league, you know? Like
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's something happening there that like now there's this like rivalry competition between the Super League and the Champions League, because at first it was just like, no, we want to keep the Champions League. Like, we don't need to add another tournament, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're denouncing you publicly, UEFA. But then after that, they turned around and like used all their ideas, all their format, everything for themselves. So I'm sure there has to be like, I would love like a Barcelona response level kind of announcement, you know? You remember the video that they never responded to? It
Yes.
was like a mic drop.
Yeah.
Like that kind of mic drop announcement of the Super League. I don't know.
Look, I'm skeptical, but I'd love to see it just because it would be entertaining to see something like that unfold. I do think for as much as fans want to paint Real Madrid as this evil corporation, which everything is relative, I don't think UEFA has this like long lineup of friends. You know,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think people are like even these big clubs need to be dissuaded from the idea of like, hey, maybe we should not work with UEFA. Like maybe the Super League was not the perfect pitch or way to do it, but I don't think UEFA has this like long list of, you know, pacts of that can never be
true.
severed. Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably right.
And then Ural just wanted to clarify that each of the leagues would have 18 following the example of the Bundesliga and Liga. Yeah. So the reduction of 2 teams, which Bundesliga and Liga have 18 teams right now.
I think it would, like I said, it would just change the competitiveness of bottom table.
Yeah.
I don't think it would change a lot. Less matches, I guess, or would there be? Yeah, I guess there would be in a season because the Bundesliga starts later or it starts earlier, finishes earlier. I'm not sure. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to change subject. Go. You just finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say from a fixture perspective, like from a overload perspective, I think it would make perfect sense. Because it would add to the competitiveness. It's not the same, like at least you get some versatility of the teams that are being relegated and promoted. But then it would take away some of the fixtures during the year, which would add a longer break, which would probably be filled with more friendlies or more fixtures, to be fair.
Yeah,
So,
they'll replace it with some bullshit. Yeah. What about in terms of like Real Madrid specific schedule? I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I was curious to know if you had a chance to look at the Champions League schedule combined with the league schedule. Like if there's any part of the schedule that you feel that's particularly tricky, or maybe problematic, or any part of the schedule that you had your eye on.
It's just like, for me, as it stands, it's the lack of recovery between matches. Like already it's like the other day we had I forget which 2 like match days it was in a row, but we played Thursday and then we played again on Saturday or Sunday, you know, and I know that's like relatively common, but that's a weekend. You're playing like 2 matches in a weekend, which is a lot. Like this is not us. I go out and play 7-a-side and I'm dead for like 4 days, you know, and I'm not an athlete, but there's a lot, like you said, behind the scenes that goes into. It's not just like you put on your boots, you go out and kick a ball around like we do. You know what I mean? There's training and then there's like whatever like video like training prep they do before the actual match to go over tactics and club team talk, whatever. And I'm sure that physio, all of these things, like, again, they're always out of the house. They have no time to rest. They have no time between matches to recover, which in turn, again, leads to like mental distrain. Is that even a word? I don't know. Mental like fatigue, and injuries. So I don't know. It's tough to say. We have a run of like Champions League, Clasico, or like Atletico Madrid Champions League, Clasico, Champions League, or something like that. In like a let me bring it up.
So while you bring that up, I'm just going to quickly point out that what you said about, the fact that these guys are training and it's not like you and I are like, like, because for me, I'm in the camp that the more I play, the better I am. Like,
Yeah,
I can't, if I play like more than once a week, I'm much better in every time I play. But also,
for
I'm
sure.
not training every day like these guys.
Yeah,
So these guys don't need that the way I would. And also, like Lucas had made this point on a podcast we did last week that like Real Madrid during their training sessions, every training session is like almost all about recovery.
yeah,
It's like
of course.
there's no like they don't do many tactics. They just like, okay, first of all, like here's a list of like 7 players who are recovering individually from their injuries. And then the rest of us are not like, we're not going at a high intensity because we can't.
Yeah.
Like we gotta save that for the games.
I think there's like a very good balance in between. I agree with you. Like to stay in form, you have to be consistent. You have to, like anything. Do you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
stay good at something, you have to continue to do it. Um, but there'll be a time, like if you continue, that you just like work. Like if you're always working, if you're always logging on after hours, if you're always putting the time in, there's going to become a time where yes, you're getting your work done, but your productivity decreases till eventually like you burn out and you just can't give, like your cup's empty. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you can't
Yeah.
give anymore because you don't have any more to give. And for me, it's the same. Like this is still a job for them. The only difference is it's a very like physical, this job takes a huge physical toll on their bodies, and at the end of the day, like they're human beings, you know.
Yeah.
So I think like you mentioned something a few conversations ago, but I do think their output like in matches will go down. Like I think things will be sloppy, they'll be tired, like they'll be exhausted, and I think that's when a having squad depth and B having like Ancelotti rotating a little bit more or making subs a little bit earlier, you know, like being able to manage from that side of like Fede last year played what every single match in the season except for one in all competitions. Amazing for him. Like he had a great season and luckily he didn't get injured, but it's a matter of time until like your body starts, you know what I mean? Anyway.
No, yeah, for
So
sure.
go ahead, sorry.
I think for Ancelotti to rotate more to kind of keep up with the pace of the schedule. I understand that he can do that with the attacking positions, but like the reality is like he really can't in certain positions, and it has a trickle down effect. Like if he has to play Chouameni at center back,
Mm-hmm.
and Camavinga is injured, like that's like it's like you're already out of options there. Like it's over. There's no room to rotate.
Yeah,
Like
literally.
like right now, we don't even have Camavinga to cover for Chouameni if he wanted to play center back because we have neither of them.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yeah.
Chouameni is back for this first game, then I guess he can. But like, there's only, I think some of this is just going to be like by default. Like you can't really
Yeah.
rotate, unfortunately,
Yeah.
unless you really, 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 really trust the players you have in the youth system. Which right now, as of now, like you can't even do that because of injuries there. So it's going to be challenging. Like, could he rotate more? I think the answer is yes. But I think it's going to be tough for him to do that as well.
Yeah. I think, like you said, it goes hand in hand. Like,
Yeah.
we need to sign squad depth. And I just think that's something that Perez especially is kind of just shied away from. Especially now that we're losing a lot of, like, we've lost Nacho, we've lost Joselu, we almost lost Ceballos, you know, like, Some are on loan. We have some attacking squad depth, but like and you know what? At the beginning of the season, I would have told you I thought we had a ton of insane midfield squad depth, but now I'm like, do we? You know? And then they're selling all of the like really top performing Castilla players to like, I mean, rightfully so. Like they're too good to be playing at Castilla, but not quite good enough to be breaking into the Real Madrid squad. So it makes sense, but I don't know. It's catch-22.
It's going to be problematic. It's going to be tough, and we'll see. We'll see, Leah.
Literally, we'll see.
We're
Okay,
about to
I
find
have
out.
the schedule. We will.
Okay.
So the 29th of September, we have Atletico Madrid. Then October 2nd, there's only 30 days in September. So that's 3 days, like literally 3 days later. We have Lille in the Champions League. Then again, 4 days later, October 6th, we have Villarreal. October 20th, I think there must be another international break there. We have Celta, but then listen to this. October 20th, we have Celta. October 22nd, we have Dortmund.
Yeah.
Like Celta or not, that's insane. 2 days. And
that Celta game, I'm going to assume is going to be rescheduled to the 19th. So, but still, it'll be 3 days, which is still tight. Yeah.
Because 1 day usually would be for like recovery or whatever. Half a day. I don't know how. I'm not a professional footballer, so I don't know how it works exactly. But then like you have to get training in there, physio, whatever to like recover from. Anyway.
Yeah.
22nd, Dortmund.
Yeah.
27th, Barcelona.
Yeah.
November 3rd, Valencia. November 5th, 2 days again. Champions League, Milan. Like insane. Like too crazy. So that I think is like the biggest problem of all of the football problems right now. I think the schedules are just like there's only so much a human being can give, you know, physically.
That'll definitely be the toughest stretch, I think, because like October is wild because you have Lille, Villarreal, Celta, Dortmund, Barca, and then there's a quick turnaround to Valencia 6 days after that in November to Milan. And then, you know, you have Leganés 3 days before going to Anfield. Look, it's going to be tough. But look, there's always, I feel like this is not even the peak of it. The peak of it will be, I think, once you get into like February, March, that's when you get into like these, all of a sudden this game before Clásico is not Dortmund in a group stage game. It's like the Etihad, you know, that's when it gets really crazy. But yeah. So that's
a good point.
I mean, all of this will lead up to that moment. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but it's in the interim, it's going to be tough because there's a lot of games and you're running out of bodies, and that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Paris does something in the winter for once. Even
that's
just
not
like
gonna happen.
It won't. No. It literally won't.
Well, I mean, by then, once we're getting into the winter transfer window, it'll just be a lot of like Alaba's coming back soon. It'll shift to that. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, there'll become a point where our mentality will shift too. Like if the league is so far gone that like it's just let's focus on Champions League, you know, and just like then if the league is so far gone that it's not recoverable because of injuries, then that's a good opportunity to focus on Champions League and give Castilla players like they're only going to get like first team experience by getting experience, you know, by being called up, by having those minutes. And that's, I think, somewhere a couple of years ago, we did a really good job because I feel like a lot like when Marvin Park was playing, when what was the guy's name with the big hair? He had one name.
Peter Federico.
Yeah, Peter, Miguel Gutierrez. Like in that era, there was a lot of Castilla players that were being called up that were playing for the first team. Again, we had a lot of injuries, but I think there'll become like that transition point where it'll be clear to the club, like to the club and the staff that like, okay, it's salvageable or it's not. Like,
Right.
let's put our focus here. And then with that, maybe the academy players or Castilla players will get a little more minutes. But for me, like there becomes, if you're not going to make signings, like you have to do one. Otherwise, you can't field a team. Like you have to either call people up from your B team or you have to sign people. And if you don't want to do one, you have to do the other. You know. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. That's my two favorite words. We'll see. Honestly, like who knows?
Literally,
Who
we will.
knows? This could be a wild success. It could be horrible. I don't, no idea. But yeah, the schedule is going to get crazy. And we're going to have a lot to talk about. A lot.
I'm excited.
So
I'm excited for Champions League.
very excited. That happens in 8 days against Stuttgart at home. That's the Champions League opener at the Bernabeu. Leah, I'm in the process of upgrading to 25, FC 25.
Yeah.
We'll do the live stream matchup soon at some point. I'll keep you updated.
Yes. Let's do it.
What's next? Well, you and I have to figure out off air when we're back together next. So we'll sort that out. So just so our listeners know, Lucas and I are doing a podcast tomorrow for free, and then the rest of it will be on patreon.com/managing Madrid. So get in on that action. Awesome. Great chatting. Great catching up, Leah.
Likewise.
We'll see you
We'll see.
soon. We'll see. Peace out,
We'll
guys.
see. Bye.